dark dreamer? It is said that to best enjoy the light, you must first explore the heart and soul of the darkness. We are the artists who create in the shadows, whose dreams are designed to become your reality. I'm Stanley Wiater. Welcome to my world of the dark fantastic. Welcome to the world of dark dreamers. Are you a dark dreamer? The KNB Effects Group most collectively is. What do directors Wes Craven, Don Coscarelli, and Frank Darabont have in common? They have all employed the extreme imaginations of Robert Kurtzman, Gregory Nicotero, and Howard Berger, collectively known as KNB. Since 1988, KNB's expertise in special makeup and creature effects has the genre's top directors coming back for more. John Carpenter has used them 3 times for In the Mouth of Madness, Vampires, and most recently, Ghosts of Mars. Sam Raimi went to them twice for Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, as did Robert Rodriguez for The Faculty and From Dusk Till Dawn. And that is just the tip, as they say, of their gory iceberg. Recently, Bob, Greg, and Howard invited us to their shop in Los Angeles, where we discussed the special synergy required to create such movie magic. Bob, like myself, have you always been monster crazy?
Pretty much from the time I was like 5. I didn't play sports that much. I stayed home and watched monster movies. You know, every Saturday afternoon they used to have double features on, and the weekend movie, and then these late night horror hosts like Big Chuck and Little John or The Ghoul were always on. So I just, try to stay up as late as I could on Friday night and then stay home all day Saturday and get a big bowl of chips and some pop and just watch horror movies all day.
How did the 3 of you finally meet?
The 3 of us met, first off, I met Howard out here when I tried to get a job at John Buechler's, and I was there every day knocking on his door. And Howard had gotten offered a job on Day of the Dead with Tom Savini. And so he was going to leave for location. And John Buechler's a really cool guy, and he was like, well, your position's still open when you come back if you'd like to still work here, as long as you find somebody to replace you while you're gone. So Howard, luckily my thing was right there on the phone pad, Kurtzman just called looking for work. So Howard called me up and said, I don't know who you are, but can we meet, go to a movie, and then, maybe I can give you this position. So we went and hung out and instantly hit it off. And then a few days later, he's gone, and I was working at Buechler's. And then he met Greg while working on Day of the Dead, and then the 2 of them came back, and the 3 of us decided to move into a house together with another guy, Dave Kinlan from back east, who is a mechanic out here, machinist. And so we all got a house together, and it was called the House of Wayward Makeup Artists because everybody seemed to crash at our place when they came in town from out of state. So,
but in terms of what you primarily do is horror films, do you think that you're getting the respect?
The horror genre never gets respect. So, and I see that as a director too. I mean, the directors who do horror films, they always have trouble breaking out of that because everyone thinks, they just make schlocky movies. But we managed actually over the years as an effects house to be able to do different things, animal effects on Dances with Wolves and, movies like Misery, even though it was a horror film, it was a little, wasn't, a blood and guts horror film or, it wasn't a monster movie. And so those things kind of elevate you out of being just stuck in the gore effects world,
It would seem to be a natural tendency to hire people like yourself who can direct because of your background.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of calls to work on effects-driven movies. I mean, that's kind of my background. And I don't necessarily not want to do effects. I love effects films. And I think visually those are the most challenging kind of movies to tackle, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, whatever. There's a lot you can do with the atmosphere and everything, and just a lot you can play with on a design level. And I love to work with, artists, so from sculptors to production designers to concept illustrators. And I love the process of working with artists, so that I have a lot of fun with.
Are there any projects in development that you can discuss with us?
Well, I got a film that actually opens in 2 weeks that I didn't direct. Produced with my wife. My wife's a producer, and I exec produced it. It's called My First Mister, and it's Albert Brooks stars in it. It's Christine Lottie directed it, and Lily Sobieski's in it. And it's totally outside of my, my directing tastes, but it's a coming of age kind of drama between this young girl and an older guy, and how they find a friendship that shows them what's important in life again. And it's a good movie, and so that comes out in October. And then I just set up another movie with Wes called Junk, and it's a kids movie, and Wes is exec producing, and we're doing it with Dimension.
Speaking of children, you worked on Spy Kids. Was that a lot of fun working with Robert Rodriguez again?
Well, we've obviously done like 4 movies now with Robert, and it's always a good time. And Greg deals a lot with going to set whenever, because him and Robert like to hang out. So Greg goes to the Robert Rodriguez sets. But yeah, it's always interesting working with Robert on a film. It's great watching how he works as a filmmaker, and how he handles his sets and his crew, because he's very energetic. And he's still in the Sam Raimi mode, of like being, this guy who's always given, $10, and he always tries to make it look like double. So and it's guerrilla style filmmaking still, so it's cool.
Is it still fun for you to get up every day and go to work?
Yeah, it's cool. I have it's my office at home has become more of an office than my office here, and it's because I used to spend too much time here, on weekends especially, because I would come here and work. So I try to set up a little space at home so I can stay home more often on the weekends and stuff. So I do a lot of prepping Photoshop and putting together presentations and stuff for my film projects. So I'll end up spending, once I'm into, it's like painters and artists and guys sculpting and things like that, when they get into a project that they're really into, they work almost nonstop until they have it finished.
How does KNB decide on a project?
Well, money's a factor. Time and money, both factors. And then it would be the material itself and who was making it. So we're running a business, so it's kind of hard. I mean, there's projects we've worked on that we're like, oh, God, I don't want to work on this, but we have to, because we need to keep the doors open. And then there's the projects that you just would pull your teeth out to get to work on. So we read the script, and then we meet with them, and the ones that we really want, we put a lot of effort into trying to get. We've done projects that we've actually lost money on, so just because we knew they didn't have the money and we really wanted to do it. So those don't come that often, but there's always a up and coming filmmaker or somebody that you want to work with, or hear the buzz is good and the material's good and they actually have a decent star attached to it, and you're like, hey, let's get involved with this. I know we're not going to make a ton of money, but it would be good on the resume. So.
When you were a kid, were you the only weird kid on the block, or were there a lot of brothers like you?
There was one other guy that was like me. His name's Chris Lott, and he was my best friend in high school. And he and I were the ones that would cut school and get on a bus and go downtown Pittsburgh and see movies. When I got to college, of course, I had developed a lot more interest in makeup and prosthetics and stuff. So Halloween parties at Westminster College were always fun, because I would spend half the day making people up, doing wounds and gunshots and whatever. And I still have really great pictures of me and my friends from Halloween parties, and I would make everybody up. And of course, once in a while I'll get a phone call saying, hey, remember you made me up for Halloween. Now I see, you win an Emmy and you're on TV and you're this and that. And it's kind of funny, a lot of my friends. And what's interesting is, if you ever talk to people I grew up with, they would all say, oh, we knew. We always knew that Craig, somehow or another, would have ended up in the film industry. It was just my passion and my interest and my enthusiasm for it was so great. I mean, I remember my dorm rooms covered in movie posters, and so it just really was a matter of how I found the path to get me to where I was destined to be. I never even imagined that I would be here, but I was fortunate enough to take the right turns here and there. So,
Did those right turns include working with Tom Savini?
well, that was absolutely the first of many right turns. Was my association with Tom Savini and George Romero. My uncle Sam, who is a local actor in Pittsburgh, had worked with Romero on The Crazies, and they developed a friendship. Sam also wrote for Cinefantastique. He wrote the big article on Romero after Night of the Living Dead came out. So they were friends. So subsequently, at a ripe age of probably 15 or 14 or 15, I met George Romero. And that was my, I was in awe because I had seen Night of the Living Dead. And when Dawn of the Dead came out, and then subsequently Creepshow, when Creepshow came out, when they were shooting Creepshow, I actually went to visit the set several times, and that was really, I'd gone to visit the set of Dawn of the Dead maybe once or twice, but I was still too young, and they were shooting all nights, and it was really hard to, if you don't drive, to get to the Monroeville Mall in the middle of the night to watch them shoot a zombie movie. But Creepshow came about, and I was 17, and I went to visit the set a lot. And I struck up a friendship with George and Christine Romero, and I knew them before I even knew Tom. I met Tom on a set visit to see George and Chris Romero, and Tom and I just sort of instantly struck up a friendship, and somehow or another we stayed friends and became friends, and when Day of the Dead came about, it was my summer before my senior year in college, where I was about to go off and become a doctor and take my medical school boards, all that stuff. And I went downtown Pittsburgh to have lunch with George and Christine Romero, and they said, "Hey, we're getting ready to do Day of the Dead. Do you want a job?" I said, "Let me get back to you." And I rushed home, got a speeding ticket on the way home, called Savini and said, "I just got hired on Day of the Dead. Can I be your assistant?" He said, "Yeah, absolutely." And that was it. That was the beginning of my illustrious creature career.
Of all your productions, would you say that From Dusk Till Dawn is perhaps the greatest showcase for KNB effects?
Dusk Till Dawn, I think, has the greatest variety of effects. But ironically, not much of that was scripted. I mean, there's a line of dialogue in the script when they're in the bar and the vampires reveal themselves, and suddenly the dinner bell rings and the doors are all latched and the vampires all suddenly turn into hideous creatures. And the line in the script says, "And all hell breaks loose." And that's it. That's all it said. It didn't say, "This guy happens here, this happens here, this happens here." So we literally sort of improvised a bunch of gags, as well as we'd be on set with Robert, who was still sort of getting his chops. I mean, Robert had grown up very, very much like I had in terms of being a fan of John Carpenter and George Romero, and he loved Savini stuff. And so it really ended up being one of those things where Robert would come up with an idea and he'd turn to me and he'd go, "What do you think about this?" And I'd say, "Okay." And I'd run from the set to the shop. "Howard, we need to pull a guy's arm off. We're going to do this and do this. I'll be right back." And I'd run back, and I never was further away from Robert than 10 feet, because he would come up with stuff, and I wanted to be able to be on top of it. I mean, one of the things I've learned about being in the industry is, you never say no. If a director says, "I want to do this," the last thing that any director who has instilled his trust in you by hiring you is that he doesn't want to hear no. What he wants to hear is options. And there have been numerous occasions when I have had directors come up to me, including Bob Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg, and people and say, "That was great. Perfect. Thanks. Okay."
KNB collectively has done over 400 films. Is it still fun to come to work every day?
Aside from being an avid effects monster geek, I am also I collect old movie posters. I have Creature from the Black Lagoon and Bride Frankenstein. I mean, pretty much anything monster related. But I always sort of equate that to telling all my friends, well, I'm building all the toys, or I'm making all the things I wanted when I was a little kid. So when I was a little kid, I wanted the Jupiter 2 from Lost in Space. I wanted a Martian War Machine. I wanted Hydra from Jason and the Argonauts, which I haven't built yet, but someday. And one of the other things I wanted was a time machine. So lo and behold, I ended up partnering up with a friend of mine, and between him and another guy, we kind of replicated the original design of the time machine. When we were prepping the Green Mile, we had a meeting at my house one day, just because it was easier for everyone to meet in Studio City than to go out in Chatsworth and wherever. And Frank Darabont and David Valdez came to my house, and Valdez walked in and went, "Oh my God, you have the time machine. What is that doing here?" I said, "Well, it's a replica," and I sort of gave my spiel. So lo and behold, there's a remake of the time machine that DreamWorks is doing, and we're trying to get involved, and we're trying to get in on it, and they're like, "Well, it's already, it's already taken care of," and there's another company that's doing the gig. And fortunately for me, I get a phone call one day from David Valdez, and he goes, "I never forgot about that time machine sitting in your living room." And I said, "Oh, thanks, I guess." And he said, "Well, are you interested in working on the remake?" And I went, "Yeah, absolutely." I said, "Are you kidding me? That would be a dream for me. One day it'll hit me. One day when I have a kid and my kid will watch one of these movies that I did, or then I will feel like I've sort of made some sort of mark in film history, I guess."
Your parents were supportive?
My parents were really, really supportive. I think at first they thought, oh, Howard he's obsessed with monsters and it's just part of it. And eventually he'll grow out of it. But I did not grow out of it. And it got so bad in my bedroom, just covered in clay and plaster and all that stuff, that they ended up building a shop for me outside in the backyard that I could destroy. So yeah, in that case, they were extremely supportive and really, saw that there was a future ahead and knew that I had established a relationship with Stan Winston early on. I met Stan when I was like 13 years old and found his shop and went over there and kept knocking on the door till he answered, and finally did, and invited me in, and I was able to go over and visit Stan, and I feel I owe Stan a lot, as well, because he was very, very generous, and I was very grateful for it, growing all up. And he always promised, when you get out of high school, you come see me and I'll give you a job, but now's your job is school, and that's number one. And it was. He was real strict about that with me. And then I graduated high school. I went over, knocked on the door, and he said, "Okay, come on in." And I got to work over there on Predator and Aliens and Invaders from Mars and Pumpkinhead. So it was, Stan made good to his promise. And as long as I kept my grades up and was a good guy, it all came through.
Could you give us a few examples of other films when you had a great deal of fun?
Other films that I've had like the best time. Army of Darkness was awesome, and I still like that movie so much, and I don't even know if it's a good film. I just had such a good time working on it, and Bob and I did the majority of the set work on location, and then Greg came on when we hit the stage. And we were out there 24/7. Sam Raimi works you like a dog, and he worked us like dogs, but it was hog heaven. I could never do it today. I couldn't. I just don't have the energy, but it was magnificent. Dusk Till Dawn was great. I had a great time. Let's see, the early years, Evil Dead 2, where Bob, Greg, and I worked on that. We had a great time. Day of the Dead was marvelous, which we did with Tom Savini, Greg, and myself. Most recently, I did a film called 13 Ghosts, which is a remake of the original William Castle film that we did for Joel Silver. Shot that in Vancouver. And that was awesome. I had the best time. Originally, I was only going to go up for a week and then leave my crew there. And I'm like, no, I'm coming back. And I went back like 3 or 4 times and just stayed because I love Vancouver. It's really great. The people up there are magnificent. The crew was dynamite. The director, this guy Steve Beck, is a commercial director. This is his first feature film. Did a great job. The producers, everything about it was awesome.
You mentioned before about knocking on Stan Winston's door. Mm-hmm. Do people knock on your door?
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, like I said, I badgered Stan. I badgered Rick Baker worse than anybody, in my opinion. I literally, tried to find Rick Baker's number, and I kept looking it up in the phone book. Rick Baker. And then I could never find it, and I realized, wait a minute, his name is Richard A. Baker. So I went, oh, Richard A. Baker. And I think I was 13 or 14 years old, and I called every night. And I got his then wife, Elaine, answered the phone. And I called every day for 6 months. And I just kept thinking, he's going to never talk to me because I'm so annoying. And I think after 6 months, she said, "Know what, Howard, you're really, really persistent, aren't you?" I said, "I have to meet Rick Baker. I have to talk to him. I mean, I just have to." She said, "Fine. I've told him you're going to call. Here's the shop number." That was a dream come true. So I called up, and he answered, and I was hyperventilating like crazy. Not that I don't do that now, but I still am a huge fan of Rick Baker's, and I think he's just fantastic. But I just remember on the phone, "Hi, I'm Howard Berger," and he just said, "Hey, no, calm down. I'm just a normal guy. Why are you getting all excited? It's fine." So, and then one thing led to another. I got to meet him, so on. Well, I vowed always that if I ever was lucky enough to get to a position where I own my own shop, that I would be very receptive to people coming to visit the shop. People call, "Can I come for an interview?" or "Can I come see the shop? I'm a real big fan." I don't really deny anybody. Even writing letters, people will write me, because I wrote a lot of letters when I was a kid and then never heard back. And that really I thought was wrong. And I just vowed that if I get a letter, I'm going to write back right away. Now it's email. It's so much easier. Ding. But, I pretty much stick to my guns about that.
If someone wanted to follow your dark dream, how would they do it?
I think you have to have a genuinely enthusiastic love for monsters and creatures and makeup and film in general. Because, I mean, our interest just doesn't go to like, I only like monster movies. I love musicals. I love every bit of film. But really in your heart feel that you really, really do love it, and that you will stop at nothing to do it. And that's really it. If you want something bad enough, it'll happen. If you just talk about it, it's not going to happen. So you really, really need to, have it. I mean, I've hired people that have no artistic ability, but had the enthusiasm beyond belief, and they became great, great effects people. Maybe they didn't sculpt, maybe they didn't paint, but they figured out how to build some amazing things. And it was all based on being resourceful and intelligent, and using their minds and their heads about, finding new and exciting things and materials and ways to do things. I mean, it's really it. It's limitless, and I think, any aspect of filmmaking is amazing and fun and rewarding. But I just think, in order for your dreams to come true, you have to really believe in them, and not veer from the path, and just keep going until it happens. I mean, that's what I did, and obviously it worked out fine. If I had stopped, who knows, I'd be working at a gas station pumping gas or something. But I was destined to get Rick Baker on the phone, and there you have it.
Join me here again on the wild side of the imagination, where a sense of wonder and a feeling of terror can often intersect. You'll find us waiting here, the Dark Dreamers.